Tales from my D&D campaign.
Previously,
they get jumped by a silent, invisible elf in full plate, but Angel tells him he's not allowed. And he leaves. They seek the advice of a druid. I smell an arcane taint upon you all. Wait, you don't think... Astral Plague has a nice ring to it. Space aids! They gave us space aids! Secret twin assassins! But Angel tells them they aren't allowed.
I don't care who you are, you're wanted dead. Yes, new weapon. Welcome to the team.
Heading to the plot diagram, they made some contacts with the Warbond, dealt with 2.5 assassins, learned a little about the White Spirit Seed, and found out the Dark Ancient and the Portal gave them the same astral plague that wiped out an ancient civilization. But for now they're on their way back to DeCorso to finally complete that 3-part quest thing. And they return to a hero's welcome at Corso's Chasm, and they're paid 8,000 gold for going to Ginneron, plus 3,000 more from the steward's personal wealth for the rescue, and Don DeCorso sees the medals Don Horatio gave them and awards them slightly larger medals of his own. That's more like it. But no mugs? And they have finally assembled all 3 of the magic artifact spoons, completing the 3-part quest thing. Minor problem though. These magic artifact spoons are valuable because each one can magically conjure food at will, with no limit to their daily uses. DeCorso's plan is to sell them to Black and Draven's homeland of Vistria, a faraway nation swamped with refugees from conquered Verandi. This is our chance to make a fortune, being heroes! But before they can get rich by feeding the poor, they need to get the spoons to Vistria. A long and dangerous journey. Elena, the Dawn's representative there, has already negotiated a deal to sell the trio for 94,000 gold. Thing is, DeCorso won't see any of that cash for ages due to the distance and danger and stuff. So he offers them 2 choices for payment. They can treat it as a simple FedEx mission, and he'll pay them 30,000 gold, mostly on arrival. Or DeCorso would sell them the spoons and the contract if they pay him 40,000. That way, he won't have to wait months or years for his share, and the party would increase their own profits to 54,000 gold. And they have to think about it. They even negotiate a slightly better price for the sale. But in the end, they go with the low-risk FedEx option, because it's a pain for them to scrape up 40,000 in cash when they could be using that money for better gear to survive the journey. But they're shopping and crafting new gear, and little ones trying to train Daggerface and Half-Orc guy, when one day Akuatoa walks right into town. Actually, it's from Illud, the less evil faction, delivering a message from Ba'ob to the Dawn, and Angel sneaks into the dwarf-hold ninja style, using her stealth and racial silence ability, so she overhears the whole thing. Most of it is an increased offer for the stun rod schematics, but Ba'ob also offers some, quote, esoteric wisdom. Do not trust Envoy Olundo. And there are still a few things you can learn from Oru. And Angel sneaks back out and reports this to the party. You're welcome. And then a few minutes later, one of DeCorso's guards arrives, inviting them to come hear what was in Ba'ob's message. No, don't worry, we still think you're awesome. So they all pretend to be surprised, then try to figure out the cryptic message. According to the Dawn's advisors, of the Illud envoys who help protect Dwarven shipping, not one current envoy is named Olundo. We don't know any KTs named Oru either. That's because Oru's not a name. Huh? What? I know some Kuar. And Angel explains that Oru is the Kua word for you. But their grammar treats it as a proper name, so it makes sense that you would capitalize it when translating into Common or Dwarven. So it says, there are still a few things you can learn from you? That doesn't make any sense. Though, come to think of it, they did use Oru as a name in those old Illud comic books. Comic books? Yes, comic books. A little over 80 years ago, the Illud started quietly distributing thin storybooks with pictures to Dwarven children. The comics, called Hero Tale, were written in Dwarven and followed the adventures of a heroic Illud monitor fighting evil monsters. It was propaganda, and the Dons became aware of it around issue 4 and banned them, so that only 5 issues were ever produced, and they're now rare collector's items. If they want to learn about that, they're going to have to visit a museum in Bankton that has all 5 issues. That raises another question, though. What route should they take to get to Vistria? There are 3 ways to go, each of them a multiple-month trip. The normal way would be to take the West Highway, passing between Uruk and the Elven lands, skirting the edge of the desert for 1,000 miles or so. If you're worried that path might somehow not get you killed by orc attacks, you could try the direct route, cutting straight through the infernal heart of the desert, which is kind of like begging all the biggest, nastiest orcs to flatten you. I think we should go that way. I want to recruit some orcs. Yeah, spoiler, they strongly consider that option for weeks But they don't end up going that way. The third possible route would be from Larek straight through Diluvian-occupied Verandi. Unlike the desert route, the terrain itself isn't deadly, and you're trading the super-lethal orcs for Diluvian shock troops. It's certainly easier to fight 10 or 20 KTs than 3 or 4 orcs, but unlike orcs, the Empire is organized, and cutting a bloody swath through their territory risks an escalating response. And of course, if monitors get involved, everything goes out the window.
A chance to fight monitors is one of the good things about going that way.
Right. Can we afford a flying carpet? Not if you keep spending your money on combat gear. So as they finish spending all their rewards and their cash advance upgrading their equipment, Angel sneaks off to visit her local contact in the Chasm, who goes by the name of Sorcerer, even though he doesn't seem to be a spellcaster. Anyway, Sorcerer has good news and bad news.
The good news is the organization has officially canceled the bounty and refunded the client's money. And given that the news has reached this far and is still spreading, it is highly unlikely that any other organization hunters will come after you. And the bad news? The former client has put an open bounty in his place, so all kinds of freaks and killers could be coming out of the woodwork. I've heard at least one famous bounty hunter who exclusively deals in live captors might make an exception to collect the 15K. Oh yeah? Who? I don't know much about him other than he's a famous bounty hunter who goes by the name Daggerface.
What? Really? No. Really? There's no way.
Our Daggerface? How many Daggerfaces can there be?
I'm thinking at least 2. Haven't we been with him all this time? You guys have been with him almost every day and night for most of the last 3 months. We should still watch him. Oh, we're going to watch him. So they set out with great fanfare. The Orc Slayer and the others cheered on from the walls of Corso's Chasm. For now, they're heading back to Bankton to check out that museum, and their plan is to go from there on through Verandi. So they ride back down the highway to Bankton. Not very exciting since they came from there just a couple weeks ago. They see the same towns, the same clumps of weird Adar crystals, the same trees, the same samurai. Wait, that part is new. This tall man in a straw hat stands in the middle of the road and makes no move as they approach, speaking only when they stop. And only when the samurai speaks do they realize it's actually a woman.
You passed by here not long ago. I sense that you have something that I want, something that you want to be rid of. Let me take it from you.
Something we don't want? Daggerface? Hey, I like Daggerface. I'm not sold on this half-orc.
I told you, I'm not much of a fighter. Something that we want to be rid of? Could it be the plague? The space age?
The astral energy that worries you. Will you allow me to take it?
Sounds good to me. Sounds too good.
I agree. How will you take the astral energy?
I will crush it from your physical form. Then you will be rid of it.
Wait, will we survive the crushing?
Survive?
You're not sure she understands the question.
I think we're fighting now.
Yes, but try not to kill her, just in case she can help somehow. And before they can even roll initiative, the samurai engages Little One in a duel of wills, just as he had against the orc. But when he leveled up, Little One had swapped out the ability that had given him an advantage at that. So this time he's the one who has to suffer penalties. Oh, and she suddenly has 3 psionically conjured astral constructs to back her up. And one of the constructs opens with a trample attack, which is really unhealthy for squishies like Daggerface and Half-Orc. Little One wants to go directly for the samurai because she is obviously the main enemy, but the other constructs are blocking for her and using improved trip to knock people down. So they battle these things, and Draven casts Fly to get out of range since it looks like all the enemies are hand to hand, and the samurai attacks with a high-level maneuver and cuts through Black's armor for 50 damage. Actually, he passes a will save and realizes that she's an illusion, but an illusion so potent that she's effectively 60% real, reducing the blow to only 30 damage. Oh good, only 30 damage!
I think we're trying to kill her now.
She's extremely nimble and is able to weave in and out of combat, using the bulky constructs very effectively to keep the heroes at bay. But whenever they do get to attack her, they hit her easily because her armor is only 60% real. So the melee warriors beat her down and Draven steals the kill with his crossbow. This started to be a thing sometime around Ginneron. Somehow Draven scores a disproportionate number of killing blows, and the trend is further exaggerated by the fact that he spends at least a couple rounds near the beginning of each battle casting buffs, meaning he makes fewer attacks in each battle, and those attacks happen closer to the end of the fight, leaving everyone to joke about what a big kill stealer he is. It's all about the timing. Anyway, when Draven finishes the Phantasmal Samurai, these monsters made of hardened ectoplasm continue to fight, and then something manifests another psionic power, covering a vast area with this ectoplasmic shambler, kind of an acidic mist that deals 5 damage around and blocks vision. but Draven, from up high, manages to figure out that the spell came from one of the crystal outcroppings beside the road, so as Black and Angel drop some constructs, Little One races over and hits the crystal with a maneuver that can bypass hardness, and the remaining construct stops in its tracks, while a voice in their heads is like,
Crack! Pain! Hurt!
"This doesn't seem right." Yeah, is it possible that it doesn't understand that it's hurting us?
It seems to understand Mountain Hammer.
And in this precarious ceasefire, they try to explain to the crystal spirit thing in terms it understands, like, "You're cracking us, causing pain to us. Do you have some way to take the astral plague without cracking us?"
No, only crush.
So wait, are we just letting this thing go? It seems pretty dangerous.
It must have been here a long time without attacking people. We even passed by it once. I think the space aids caused a pretty unique situation here.
Yeah, but what do we get out of this? Maybe if you break it open, it's got, like, gems or something.
And a long, narrow shape pushes up out of the ground beside the crystal spirit thing, which Draven identifies as a magical quiver that adds 1d6 ice damage to bolts stored in it. And the crystal's like,
Take! Go!
"Sounds good to me." So they head on to Bankton and the Laric National Museum, where they meet Mareia, a woman who studies Kuo-toa artifacts. And they aren't allowed to access the originals, but she lets them read her hand-scribed reproductions of all 5 issues of Hero Tale, and explains that 80 years ago, the Illud were concerned that despite being allies for 2 centuries, many dwarves still didn't draw much distinction between the Illud and their mutual enemies, the Diluvians.
Just imagine how you'd all feel if every human who appeared in any dwarven story was a villain, or at best a sleazy character like a collaborator, or a traitor, or an informant.
Doesn't sound so bad.
Anyway, the purpose of these books was really just to show a Kuo-toa being a hero, and to put that idea into the mind of a generation of young dwarves.
So they read through these propaganda comics, lovingly drawn by an assembly line of aquatic slaves, following our protagonist Oru, whose name, meaning you, makes him a pretty blatant reader avatar for this male power fantasy. Fresh from completing his trials to become a monitor, Oru fights Sahagwan bandits, a giant, and a sea monster. But the sea monster was so out of place that Oru consults a priest who divines that it came from the Shadowfell and was sent by a dreaded Mind Hunter. Following the priest's directions, Oru finds the Mind Hunter, who is only shown as a glowing-eyed silhouette, and becomes locked in a desperate battle with a pair of its crab-like minions. Oru is injured, but about to win when he is suddenly paralyzed by some magic of the Mind Hunter. The 5th book opens on that cliffhanger, and the helpless protagonist can only watch and narrate when he is amazed by the arrival of another monitor, Deathfin Unon. Deathfin is the highest rank of monitor, and the book implies that Unon is the most famous of them all. The Mind Hunter motions, and dozens more minions appear from the dark waters behind him. Unon backpedals off an undersea cliff to much deeper water, and the minions swarm down after him, unleashing a barrage of deadly eye lasers. And that's when Unon uses some crazy martial arts technique to create a void in the ocean, causing all the crustacean-like minions to fall out of the air that used to be water. And he bounces around, knocking them out of the air like a boss, until landing right in front of the Mind Hunter. The end. Yeah, that was obviously not the end of the story, but it was the end of what got printed, because even that last book mostly came out after the Dwarven Dons had banned Hero's Tale as dangerous propaganda, and the party is left wondering why Bob would bother suggesting they look into all this stuff, and which parts were pure fiction, and which parts, if any, have any trace of reality. But while at the museum, they run into Bolrad, the Illud ambassador to Laric, who regularly visits Mareia to discuss Kuo-toa cultural artifacts. He tells the party that Unon is a real thing. In fact, he's a very important thing. According to Ambassador Bolrad, if his word is worth anything, there are 2 Kuo-toa monitors who are the most important monitors, Deathfin Unon of the Illud and Deathfin Du of the Diluvian Empire. And they are the most important because they are the most powerful, as you might expect. But Deathfin Du and Deathfin Unon are supposedly really the most powerful, as in so powerful that nobody knows how powerful they are. Ambassador Bolrad claims the Illud government has 0 doubts about Unon's loyalty, but if for some reason he did turn against him, they are concerned that he could pull a Cleric Preston, by which I mean that if it came down to a fight between Unon and every single other Illud monitor all at once, there is a possibility that Unon would win, which comes back to why Unon and Du are important to the balance of power, because Deathfin Du is also so powerful that they have no way to measure it, and that means that neither the Diluvians nor the Illud know who would win if Unon and Du ever fought it out. It could be that they are evenly matched, or it could be a one-sided DBZ beatdown, but either way, whichever one survived, that side would probably just win the KT Civil War right then and there. The prospect of being on the losing side is so terrifying that both governments are too afraid to ever use their own ultimate monitor because they each need to keep them in reserve in case the other side uses theirs, which means that these two ridiculously powerful monitors basically just sit around as a mutual deterrent, which is how the KT Civil War is also a Cold War, in addition to resembling both World War I and World War II.
So what we need to do is kill both of those guys, and then we can scare both sides into unconditional surrender.
Yes, all we have to do is kill the two most powerful things in the world. Okay.
It's a long-term goal. Very long-term.
And that's all very interesting, but it doesn't really affect the party at the moment. So they continue with their vague plan to fight their way to Vistria through the Diluvian-controlled nation of Varandi. And so they head on down the road until the next session where Angel, the player, was absent. And that's when they run into a standard road blocked by trees ambush next time on Tales from My D&D Campaign. And that's when they run into a standard road blocked by trees ambush. Next time! This is actually horrible.